Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. I'm your host, Matt Hurley, and in today's show, we're going to discuss the only two games in the All Ireland Football Championship this weekend, both coming from the province of Ulster, with Derry taking on Fermanagh and Tyrone and Monaghan. And it's a big weekend for the ladies this weekend, as the LGFA finals are in Croke Park on Saturday, and of course, the Camogie final between Cork and Galway is on Sunday. And all these five games are live on TV or GA Go, which is absolutely brilliant to see. And I'm delighted to be joined by Play on GA host Seamus Brady to discuss this weekend's action. First of all, Seamus, how have you been over the last few days? College work has been hectic, I'd imagine, but last weekend it was a huge weekend for Gaelic football. We mentioned off air 3 shocks with New York, Clare, and Roscommon winning. So happy days. The championship is well and truly back.
Yeah, it is, Matt. Thanks for having me back. As for how I am, top of the world, finished the bulk of my college assignments, so now I have some time to do other things. Luke took the wheel with the podcasts last week. Some amount of action though. I mean, you're talking like New York getting their first ever championship win, beating Leitrim, Clare beating Cork as well. Massive, potentially puts them into the All Ireland, of course, if they go on and beat Limerick off the back of that. And then Roscommon again beating Mayo, like absolutely mental. Exactly the same as how it happened in 2019 after Mayo won the league and then lost to Roscommon the next day out as well. So deja vu, but a hell of a weekend and a hell of a way to kick off the championship. And now, again, back-to-back weekends, and the fact that all games, as you said, being shown on various stations, it's great.
It is. It's absolutely brilliant. And I suppose before we get into the action, a lot of people saying the provincial championships have been dead. I know I had this discussion on GFA and TV with Aaron earlier on the week as well. That the provincial championships, a lot of people were saying was dead. But when you look at the 3 results, when you look at what it meant to the New York players beating Leitrim, when you look at the scenes in Ennis last Sunday when Clare beat Cork, does that kind of put the provincial championships back on the map, or do you think we need to wait a while before the likes of Dublin, Kerry, Galway, all of them come to the fray?
Well, that's what the big question is what do you define by being a good championship? If you define it in terms of who's going to win, well then, we know that one of the championships is dead anyway. The Leinster Championship has, I'm just going to throw this fact out to your viewers, Matthew, that if they are watching this clip on Instagram or TikTok, well, neither of the platforms existed the last time that Dublin lost in the Leinster Championship. So that just tells you how long it's been that Dublin have just reigned over the Leinster Championship. And apart from 2011 when Wexford had Dublin right there and Kildare in that Leinster semi-final as well, since then, Dublin have not even looked like they were in any way close to any of the teams. Even 2021 when Dublin were on their, bit of a rocky patch, they never looked like losing. And yeah, this year will be no different. Dublin, I'll be stunned if they don't win the Leinster Championship again. But as for the other, provincial championships, the Ulster Championship is uber competitive, and any team, would put themselves in there to win it year after year. And the pendulum kind of swings in the Ulster Championship. I mean, you're looking at it like a couple, back in 2019, Donegal were the kings of the province, and now, I'm actually worried that they won't get passed down in the opening round. So, it shows how quickly the pendulum swings there. Whereas in the other provinces, Kerry have been dominant in Munster now for a while. Dublin have been dominant in Leinster, as I said. But Connacht is the main one. I think Connacht this year with Roscommon, Mayo, Galway, it's, and then obviously the first game between Mayo and Roscommon was a cracker, and, just Roscommon making an absolute statement with that win. So, those results definitely, give weight to the provincial championship as a competition when you see how much it meant to those players to win those games. But if you're talking who realistically can win the provincial championship, I don't think it's different this year than it was last year. That's the honest truth. And I don't think it will be any different next year either.
That's an interesting point. And while we talk about the Ulster Championship being uber competitive and ultra competitive, we're going to move on to the Ulster Championship. The only 2 games this weekend, obviously. The first game on Saturday. We have is Fermanagh against Derry in Enniskillen on Saturday, 5 p.m. on BBC Two Northern Ireland. The news just broke actually before the podcast has been recorded here. Sean Quigley is not on the Fermanagh panel. Apparently, it's an injury. It's not something he said online or anything like that. It is an injury, although Fermanagh are playing the 15 they played in the Division 3 final against Cavan. Derry still have Chrissy McCaig and Conor Glass available. They're named as 2 and 8 respectively. So they don't seem to have any injury issues. It looks like only Gareth McKinless has come in for Owen McAvoy from the league final. So it was going to be an interesting game in a sense going into it without the team news. But now that Sean Quigley's out for Fermanagh, would you kind of degrade their chances after that?
It depends. I think, look, Quigley's an outstanding forward, has been for a number of years for Fermanagh, and definitely when he came on in that league final, he did make a difference. But, Fermanagh have, as you mentioned there, like the stats that you pulled up, Fermanagh have scored really, really well throughout the league campaign, which was why it was confusing to me as to why they were scoring so low in the Cavan game for such a long period of the game. That being said, while people will say, oh, the Derry defence conceded, 4 goals in the league final, like they're back in their element now. They're back playing on provincial grounds where it's much easier to put in that defensive system. And for Fermanagh, like given that they struggled to score for long periods against Cavan, I think Derry's defence is better than Cavan's. And the fact that now they're without one of the best forwards on their team, it's not looking great for them in terms of scoring a large amount. And Derry make you play their game in a very similar way to what made Donegal under Jim McGuinness so good. Rory Gallagher, the deputy of that Jim McGuinness, team, like he's taken the same method to this Derry side where they're making teams play their game. Teams that maybe on paper have players of a similar ability, but Derry are making them play their game. And for Fermanagh, I feel like it's going to be really, really difficult to, play the type of football that they have been playing in the league at stages.
Yeah, it's going to be a difficult game for Fermanagh, right? Even though Sean McNally, I think he made 5 saves in the league final. He starts in this game. I think he's a very young player anyway. But is there kind of an argument, like we discussed before the league final, obviously, Fermanagh and Cavan, it was a damn squib game, really, and Fermanagh were scoring freely. But at the same time, they conceded 11 goals. And maybe that was at the back of their minds as well, that they needed to shut up shop and not concede as much. So, and they conceded none against Cavan, no goals at all. So, in a sense, it did work, but obviously they didn't win the game. So, is it going to be difficult for Fermanagh really to strike that balance between defence and attack? Because it doesn't seem that way when you look at the entirety of the 7 games previous to the league final and the league final itself.
Well, yeah, like that's a great point about, the amount of goals that Fermanagh have conceded. I mean, you look to, obviously match that up with a Derry side who always hit for an early goal or always hit for a goal in the first 15, 20 minutes. And they use that as the springboard to dominate the game. How many times have we seen in the league, Matthew, where one of the first 3 scores that Derry get is a goal? They always hit early for the goals. And that gives them the real base to then dominate the game from there. So that's one of the key things for Fermanagh in this game. Like, I think genuinely, if Fermanagh want to stay in this game, they need to get through the first 15 minutes without conceding a goal. They need to get through that first initial period without letting Derry build up a head of steam on them. If they want to play super, super defensive, like, the Cavan game was, and keep it to, 4 points to 2, that's fine. And then try and get to 50 minutes no more than 4 points behind, and then go for it. Because if you try and play Derry's game, Derry will win. Derry will make you play their game. So you have to go into this kind of knowing that, look, they're better at controlling the game. They're better at squeezing out points in those type of tight pitches, tight games, because that's what they've been doing since day one, since Rory Gallagher came in. And he's a master at putting in this system now at this stage. He's done it with Donegal. He's done it with Fermanagh. Now he's done it with Derry as well. So, like realistically, I just think it's way too hard of a task for them. The more I talk about it, the more I'm saying, like, look, Derry's defense is too good. Garrett McKinless coming back in as well is just makes it even better. And then going forward, as you mentioned, Fermanagh have conceded 11 goals in the league campaign. I know that they defended well against Cavan, but I can see Derry hitting an early goal and then just, dominating the game from then on.
Exactly. So, and one thing about the team sheet that was released today, I think it's been released to journalists, is actually a great thing that the GA have actually introduced this before I comment on something on the Derry team, because like there has been confusion about the team sheets, and we mentioned on your own channel that we need to introduce that. The GA have introduced it, fair play to them for that. But
they might have watched. They might have watched. Yeah, they might have watched. You can send the check over.
They have to watch, yeah. That was a brilliant video, right? And check it out if you haven't already. If you're watching this or on YouTube or listening on Spotify, it was a brilliant video where Seamus had the idea, and I came onto his podcast. It was a brilliant podcast, so make sure you check it out. But when you look at the Derry team, number 21, Kieran McFall, he's come back from the States. Is that a big coup for Rory Gallagher? Because you looked at the Galway game especially and the Dublin game in the league, they kind of ran out of steam in the last few minutes, and Cork to a lesser extent in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the last game of the league as well. Like, will that be crucial for Derry going on in the summer if they want to be successful to bring McFall in?
Big time. I think he's a quality player. You have to remember as well, the first year that Derry made their kind of burst under Rory Gallagher, like the first game that made people, I think in the championship anyway, the first game that made people kind of sit up and take notice and be like, okay, what's going on here? I think was when Donegal barely beat them by a point. Remember the McBrearty point? I think it was 2021 off the top of my 2021, yeah. McBrearty hit that late winner. And the fact that Derry took them so close did make people sit up and be like, okay, what's going on here? And like, one of the best players for Derry on the pitch that day was none other than Kieran McFall. And now he's, back in the panel. And I actually think if he pushes, I think Kieran McFall will be a starter for Derry. I think he's a fantastic footballer and fits really nicely in with what Rory Gallagher is making this Derry side into and what he has made them into. McFall can play a number of positions. He can play centre-back, wing-back, wing-forward, midfield. So, I mean, he really is a Rory Gallagher type of player. So I can see him starting for Derry quite soon, if not being their go-to impact sub. I can see him maybe picking up a similar role to how Michael Darragh-Macaulay had for Dublin around 2015, 2016, where Bastick and Fenton would put in the work and then Macaulay would come out on after 50 minutes to kind of give them that extra boost. I can see him maybe doing that either, but I definitely think he's going to have a huge role going forward.
Before we get into a prediction, like two men that are back of the team that's noticeable is Christy McKaigue at number 2 and Conor Glass at number 8. Crucial to come in when you think about it. When you look at the Dublin game, they struggled in the last few minutes. They were without McKaigue for the full game, and they were without Glass for the last few minutes. And Dublin really ran home in that game. So to have them two back into the team, it's kind of statement of intent that Derry we all know is well and truly back.
Yeah, and like to be honest, Rory Gallagher would probably play Conor Glass if he had one leg. I mean, he was out of the Glen training session for 10 minutes and he was starting for Derry. So, like, he is an outstanding player. Like, he's so damn good. He has to go in there for Derry. He's their main man. Chrissy McKaigue, I genuinely think he's the best man marker in the country. Like, just the best at just going on to someone. Because there are a lot of fantastic man markers in the country. There are a lot of brilliant man markers, but a lot of them are very suited to a certain style of player. A lot of them are really good at marking a big man, but they're not really good at marking a quick, pacey fella. A lot of them are great at marking a quick, pacey fella, but not great at marking a big man. Chrissy McKaigue can do all of that. He can do all of that. He can mark a super fast player, a super strong player. He can mark a tidy finisher. Like, he can do it all. So him being back in there for Derry is absolutely crucial. And yeah, I can see definitely him going on to whichever Fermanagh forward is causing problems. I could probably see him going on to Darragh McGurn probably at the start of the game. He's been playing really, really well. Got a lovely goal in the league final against Cavan. So I can see him probably going there. I'd be interested to see though, how McKinless's form is coming back in, because I think he's an outstanding player. And if he is at 100%, that's a massive, massive plus for Derry.
It is. And to be honest, with Quigley out, I know Fermanagh playing first 15, the same one against Cavan, but Fermanagh being Division 3 at the start of the year, Derry being one of the All-Ireland contenders, you have to fancy Derry for this game.
Oh, big time. I'm going Derry by 5 points at least. And the reason is based off of what I told you a couple of points ago, where I just said, I just see Derry hitting them early, building up a bit of a lead, 5 or 6 points, and just running it from there. I see it being like a 2 goals and 14 points to a goal and 11, or a goal and 10, or something along the lines of that, where they just strangle them, in terms of like, they don't let their forwards have a sniff at the goal, and they don't let Fermanagh build up whatever style they want to play. Derry win by making teams play their game, and that's what I think they're going to do in this one.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'll echo what you said there. No, I think Derry will win this game. Maybe it could be even 7 or 8. I think Fermanagh, like, it's going to be interesting to see how actually Fermanagh play. Will they play defensive or will they play attacking football? Either way, I think that Derry are just too good, in my opinion, and especially with Glass coming back in, with Kay coming back in, McFall on the bench, and he's going to play some part. He might even be a late change. We never know. But like, Derry will probably
win. It would be a
Gallagher
move, to be fair.
Yeah, it would be. Like, it would be harsh in general if Niall Turner was dropped, because you look at his form in the league, it's been incredible. And he was the guy that really came in for McFall last season. So, like, if he dropped, that's very, very harsh from Gallagher. But anyway, we are both going for Derry winning that game, probably about 5 or 6 points, in all honesty. But the next game in Ulster Championship is going to be an absolute mouth-watering game, much more competitive. Tyrone against Monaghan on Sunday, 4 o'clock, live on RT2. And those Northern Ireland viewers, it's live on also the BBC Sport, BBC Two Northern Ireland's channel there. So it's going to be an interesting game, this. And when you look at the two teams again, they were announced earlier today. McCurry's in, Canavan's in, Rory Canavan's on the bench for Tyrone. A certain Aaron Mulligan is on the bench for Monaghan, so he could come in and play a good part in it. McManus is starting for Monaghan. That's a big news story there. So very big game, this.
Oh, this is huge. Like, this is two of the absolute kings of Ulster over the last 10 years. Like, they've won a good few Ulster titles. They've been Division 1 mainstays. Monaghan again pulling off the great escape this year. And it's a bit of a new Monaghan team now. I mean, I know McManus is still there, but you've got new stars now, the likes of Sean Jones, Gary Mohan, Aaron Mulligan, that have come through over the last 2 years. Conor McCarthy as well. They've given this Monaghan team a new feel, but you still have the likes of Jack McCarran, Conor McManus delivering the goods as always. Darren Hughes as well, I thought, in certain games in the league was absolutely fantastic. I have a question to throw back at you here, Matthew. How much do you think that the league game is going to play into this one? Given that Tyrone won it.
Yeah, I think it's going to play a huge part, because when you look at actually the statistics behind it, Monaghan only scored 1 point from playing that game. And there'll be something at the back of their minds thinking, we have to improve here. And especially, that game was in Clonus, this game is in Armagh. So you'd have to, judging by the league performances and the fact it's in Armagh, you have to fancy Tyrone to win this game. But at the same time, Monaghan, like, I'm sure they went to Armagh a few years ago and then beat Tyrone with McManus. Remember him on the sideline in 2018?
Oh, yeah.
An outrageous score. So Monaghan will still be floating about. And when you look at Monaghan's bench, actually, it's very strong.
Well, that's the thing, is that Monaghan have they've had a similar thing that Cork had a couple of years ago, where all of a sudden they had about 6 or 7 stars on the rise in their forward line. I remember watching DCU win the Sigerson a couple of years ago, and they had David Garland and Micheál Bannigan, but then they also had Stephen O'Hanlon, Aaron Mulligan, Sean Jones, Gary Mohan, Conor McCarthy, like all these guys making huge strides, and still you couldn't drop Jack McCarran and Conor McManus. So it was like, how are they going to fit all these guys into giving them, consistent game time to, elevate their level and, get them inter-county experience? I do completely agree with your point. The fact that Tyrone beat them in a game where, okay, Monaghan did survive and they did go to Mayo and they did pull it off, but that game against Tyrone would have been an easier one, you could say, maybe for Monaghan to win. On paper anyway, you're going to go away to the team that's top of the table, or you're going to have a team that's also in a bit of a relegation fight at home. And when the stakes were really high, Tyrone won. And if you're talking, how will that affect them? Because while you're saying, yes, Monaghan only scored 1 point from play, but that could have the effect of being like giving them huge motivation to go and win this game now, to prove the doubters wrong. But then you're saying at the same time, could Tyrone just do it again and hold their forward line, keep the score down, and then do the business at the other end with the likes of McCurry and Dara Canavan, who have been in really good form?
Exactly so. And when you look at the team sheets, when you look at the two benches, there are some stars on both benches when you look at it, and which proves like it's going to be crucial how they perform coming off the bench, or even late changes. As we know, with a load of Ulster teams, they make late changes at the start. You have for Tyrone, you have Rory Canavan, absolute starlet. You have Niall Devlin, who was the captain of the under-20 team last season. Rory Donnelly's a good player. Michael McLeanan. Carl McShane's a bit off form, but still excellent player there. Joe Goose is in very good form at the moment. Niall Sludden. But when you look at the Monaghan bench, Sean Jones, Aaron Mulligan, Shane Carey, Carl O'Connell, Kieran Hughes experienced there, Dar McAlarney. Like, two very strong benches. So it's going to be a battle of the benches really in the last few minutes that make this game count.
Big time. And even though, look, there's some stars on that Monaghan bench, I think that Tyrone bench is serious. Like some of the players that are on that bench. And that was one of their, a lot of people saying that had become one of their weaknesses. Remember the amount of players that had left the Tyrone panel, like Tiernan McCann and Ronan O'Neill, and players like that had left the Tyrone panel, Conor McKenna as well. And players had left, and a lot of people were saying, they've lost that competitive edge in the squad. But looking at that bench, I imagine that competitive edge has surely returned to some level. The Monaghan bench, again, exactly the same. They've options on options on options. And yeah, I feel like you're right. I feel like it's going to be a battle of the benches, going to get down to 15 minutes left. And then I feel like Tyrone might just edge it from there.
And it's interesting as well, when you look at Tyrone's full forward line, like we mentioned during the league on many podcasts, that Tyrone's forward line was faltering in the league. But when you look at their full forward line now, Darren McCurry, Matty Donnelly, Dara Canavan, two of the corner forwards were their made scorers, and Donnelly's come in seamlessly into the team, and he's improved Tyrone game by game as well. So, like, the key thing for Monaghan really to stay in the game, I would say anyway, is to deal with them three forwards. If you could get your best markers on them three forwards, I think Monaghan might have some chance. But if Monaghan get it badly wrong, it could be a hard day for them.
Agreed, 100%. I think they have to put someone on Matty Donnelly who's comfortable playing both in the full back line and further out the field. So I would probably lean towards someone like a Fintan Kelly to go on Matty Donnelly, so that if Matty Donnelly goes around the midfield, that's no problem. If he goes in at full forward, that's no problem as well. For who picks up Dara Canavan and Darren McCurry is going to be really, really hard, because McCurry's pretty much a shoe-in for 3-4 points a game. Canavan as well is really starting to come into his own as an inter-county footballer. It's really, really difficult, because on paper that is one damn good full forward line. And if you throw in Colin McShane off the bench, if he can even come halfway close to how effective he was off the bench in 2021, like that's a very potent forward line there for Tyrone.
It is definitely, and it's interesting actually. Fintan Kelly's named to the bench as number 22. So if there's a late change, everybody, you heard it here from Seamus Brady first. Kelly is coming into the team, but that should be an interesting discussion if it does happen. And it's going to be interesting to see how the Monaghan forward line deal with the Tyrone defenders. Yes, Monaghan have excellent forwards when you look at it. Conor McCarthy starting, Jack McCarran, Carl Gallagher's done well, obviously McManus as well, and Stephen O'Hanlon, Micheál Bannigan, who have done excellent in the league. But you look at Tyrone's defenders, that is named to start at least. Michael McKernan, Ronan McNamee, and Padraig Hamsey's the full back line. That's absolutely, it's incredible, really. Conor Moyler, Peter Hart, and Cormac Quinn are the halfbacks. And Quinn is probably, you would argue, to eat weeks of those. But he was one that really impressed me in the league as a bit of an up-and-coming star as well. So Tyrone's defenders, yes, Monaghan's attackers look good on paper, but when you look at Tyrone's defenders, they're well able to match up with them.
100%. And like Tyrone, not only can their defenders defend really, really well, they also put the forwards on the back foot. Like the 2021 semi-final against Kerry, I remember all three of the full back line scored from play in the first half. And you look at some of the scores that Ronan McNamee kicked against Armagh, like he's well capable of popping up and sticking over a point. Like Michael McKernan and Padraig Hamsey are a good shoe-in for a point every game or two. And yeah, so Monaghan, while their forwards also, need to focus on scoring down at their end, they need to actually watch the Tyrone defenders flying up the pitch down the other way. Peter Hart, known for bombing forward, Cormac Quinn has done it as well. My worry for Monaghan in this game would be, how are they going to match up to Tyrone's midfield pairing? Because I think that midfield pairing is so damn good. Con Kilpatrick and Brian Kennedy, are they both starting? There you go. Like, so I know Darren Hughes was fantastic during the league, but they kind of deployed Darren Hughes as more of a sweeper. So then it is the question of who goes toe to toe with Kilpatrick and Kennedy, because when Tyrone get a foothold of the middle, I feel like that could be a real base to go and win the game.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting actually who goes into midfield. Killian Lavelle is named as Darren Hughes' midfield partner. I don't know who's going to go in
Niall Cairns, potentially.
Cairns, I think, is he on the bench? He's not on the bench, no, but Kieran Hughes is. But again, like Kieran and Darren Hughes, like if you put Kieran Hughes at the midfield, but again, I get your point. Like the energy that will sap out of Darren Hughes and Kieran Hughes, they've been excellent in the league and excellent for Monaghan throughout their careers. But when you look at Kilpatrick and Kennedy, they can go on for the full 70 if they want to as well. So it's going to be a big challenge.
Yeah, it's massive. I think as a midfield pairing, there is definitely an argument that Tyrone have the best midfield pairing in the country when they're both on it. I know there's obviously arguments there for Galway, for Mayo, but I'd be looking definitely at Tyrone's midfield pairing and saying, look, when they're on it, when they're on song, I think they blend together really, really well as well. Like the two of them are absolutely towers of blokes and they move very well and they do their job really, really well. For Monaghan, their midfield is a bit more fluid. You don't really know who their midfielders are going to be. And that's why it's difficult to predict who might match up against them. And that's why I think Tyrone definitely have the advantage in that sector.
And while we're chatting, we just like Monaghan are a good team, but we just can't see how Tyrone lose this game. Would you agree with that? Do you think Tyrone will win it in the end?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Tyrone. I'm going to go with them narrowly, 2 points. But I do think they're going to get over the line in this game. I just think the fact that when it was all on the line in the league, Tyrone came through. Again, the stakes are high in this one. I think Tyrone pulls through, especially with home advantage.
And they looked to be motoring on very nicely, Tyrone in the league. I think they won out of their last 3 games. They won 3 games in a row. That was incredible stuff. And I think they will continue that form. Like yourself, Seamus, I'm going to go probably 1 point victory. Could go either way again. Like you look at last weekend's games, Mayo, Roscommon, Clare, Cork. This is a similar feel to it. And I think Tyrone, they should win the game. But again, it's going to be a very, very tough one to call. Definitely tougher than the Fermanagh Derry game. And that's the end of the football championship, football men's championship at least this weekend. But there is some ladies' finals to get through as well. We start off with the LGFA final in Division 2 starting off. Armagh against Laois on at 3 p.m. live on TG Cahir. So interesting game. This like Armagh, you looked at them over the last few years, especially I think it was 2020. They got to the All-Ireland semi-final. They challenged Dublin all the way. Amy Mackin beat the forefront. And speaking of Amy Mackin, 6 goals and 28 points in 7 games. That's ridiculous again. And no wonder the AFLW have picked her up. It's pretty obvious why. It's the skill set of Amy is absolutely incredible. But when you look at Laois, Mo Nerney, Aron Fitzpatrick seem to be going well, and Laois obviously intermediate champions last season. So interesting game.
Definitely an interesting game. And Armagh over the last 2 years have been a team that I've always kind of looked at and been waiting for them to have their real breakthrough after that 2020 season where they pushed Dublin all the way. Yeah, like the footballers that they have, Amy Mackin, if she goes to the AFL, I know she is gone, like she's been picked up, but hopefully that doesn't have too big an impact on the Armagh setup right now, because she is an outstanding player. And I genuinely think it's maybe a bit of a hot take to say this, but I genuinely think there's an argument that she's the best player in the country. Like, you look at the tallies that she puts up, it's ridiculous. Like, it's like the amount, it's always 2 goals, 3 goals. It's relentless. Like, but you look at the other footballers that they have, the likes of Kelly Mallon, Blaughin Mackin, like they have very, very good footballers there. As you mentioned there, Laois, Mo Nerney, Aron Fitzpatrick going really well. And intermediate champions, they'll be really carrying that confidence into this game. But I am still going to go with Armagh. I think Armagh have a little bit more experience of being exposed to the top teams than Laois do. And even though Laois are on the come up, and you could argue maybe Armagh are slightly declining a little bit, I still think they're just a little bit ahead of Laois. So I probably would go with Armagh here.
And even look at the spread of scores between the two sides. Like I think Laois have only 11, with Mo Nurley scoring 6 goals and 17 points. Around Fitzpatrick 215. Obviously, they have the most complete scores out of Laois. But when you look at Armagh, despite Amy Mackin's scoring 6 goals and 28 points, and every time I look at the score sheet from Amy Mackin, I think she scores like 1-6 per game, and all from playing early, which is absolutely incredible from Amy there. Kelly Mallon's outstanding. Aoife McCoy scored 4 goals in 7 games. Bloggy Mackin's done brilliant. A big loss to was Alex Clark. I think she's injured again. She scored 1-3 in the league campaign, but another big loss there for Armagh. Lauren McConville's very good from defence as well. Grace Ferguson, very good. And when you look at Armagh, I think they won all 7 games in the league, which shows you they're that dominant in Division 2. And the reverse fixture between the two sides, it was Armagh 10 points, Laois 5 points. And coincidentally enough, that was the only game where Laois didn't concede a goal, and that was the only game where Armagh didn't score a goal. So are we going to expect the same game again?
No, I don't think. I think the forward lines are too good. You talk about the score that Mackin's put up. You talk about the scores that Mo Nurley and Aaron Fitzpatrick have put up. It's business time now, and I think both the forward lines will go for it more in this game. And I think we will see both sides hit the back of the net in this game. Armagh have been hugely impressive. 7 out of 7, as you said. I still feel like 2020, they didn't capitalize on that burst as much as I would have liked them to. And they really need to win this game to then, kind of reinvigorate that burst and try and make the most of it this time. So I am going to go with Armagh to get this victory.
You'd have to go with Armagh as well. And they've only conceded 3 goals in 7 games as well. So their defence is as strong as their attack. And Laois have conceded 17 goals in 7 games, albeit most of them were to Westmeath in the second match. They were conceded 7 in a a game where you wouldn't have seen that every day. They conceded 7 goals and 8 points, and they only scored 11 points
you
themselves.
Talk about Amy Mackin, who's misses 2 goals a game. It could spell out serious trouble for Laois.
It could do, yeah. And I think Ashley Donner was out of the Laois team as well. Remember, she got player of the match last year in the intermediate final. I think she's out for this game. So that's going to be a big loss for Laois as well. And yeah, I'd probably back Armagh to win out despite Laois's very good form. And we move on to the Division 1 final, which is an interesting one and very novel in fairness that the likes of Meath, Dublin, Cork are not in this final. We have 2 newbies on the block. We have Kerry against Galway, 5 o'clock on TG Carroll live in Croke Park, obviously. Big game this because Kerry, Division 2 champions last season, All-Ireland finalists. Galway always had a good youth system, and they're definitely coming to the fore now when you think about it, with the players coming through, like Aoife O'Rourke, like Kate Steven. Like Mairead Shoiga can't get into this team. That tells you all you need to know about Galway's form at the moment from their new players. But Kerry, besides the Cork game in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, where they played half a team, they've looked absolutely exceptional in the league so far.
They have. And one of the key things that they've done really, really well in this league campaign is similar to how Meath did last year in the championship. They proved that last year was no fluke. You're looking at the players that they have, the likes of Louise Murray-Hertig, the likes of Sheafra O'Shea, just absolute abundance of talent there going forward. On the Galway side, one thing I've been hugely impressed with Galway is how good their defence has been. They've been really, really strong at the back. And then going forward, you have the likes of Olivia Divilly, who lead the way time after time after time. And it's a really difficult one to call because I would kind of put Galway down as a more defensively sound team. I know that they are really, really good going forward, but I would put them more down as a team that locked up the defence first, whereas I would put Kerry down as a team that are more offensive, more go for the kill. And you look at them last year scoring 4 goals in the All-Ireland semi-final against the Mayo side that looked brilliant up until that point. So I think it's going to be an interesting clash of styles in this game.
It's interesting as well. Look at the 7 games. The only 2 games in the league where they conceded, or they, should I say, scored more than less, or 1 goal or less, was the first game against Waterford and the other game against Meath. They've scored a total of 15 goals in 7 games, Kerry. And that is
There you
incredible.
go.
When you look at Sinead O'Shea scored 6 goals. Like, my dad is absolutely incredible. Louise Moore-Hurtig, I think she came in match day 2 and she scored 4 goals and 29 points as well, which is ridiculous. Niamh Carberry's done well. Hannah O'Donoghue's come back into the team this season, scored 2-4. So, but when you look at Galway, they've actually conceded 9 goals. But as you mentioned with their defence to some extent, they've conceded 48 points in 7 games. Like, that's still an incredible statistic. So would you expect Kerry to maybe get 2 goals in this game and maybe something like 2 goals, 6 points, 2 goals, 7 points? Because Galway seem to shore up on conceding points, really.
Well, the defensive structure is very much like when you watch Galway play, they kind of tend to figure out where teams kind of like taking their shots from, and then they park right in front of that kind of area, right? You're not coming in here to take a shot, and if you're going to come in here to take a shot, you're going to earn it. Like that type of attitude about their defense. And whereas I feel like when teams kind of go direct and they kick the ball straight into the forwards, the Galway defense is a little bit more open to the goals. Hence why, if you were to look at the amount of goals that they've conceded, you wouldn't necessarily say that the defense is super strong. But if you look at the points, you would say that they are. That doesn't match up well with Kerry, who, as you've said, are just putting up ridiculous, amount of goals. Seamus O'Shea with 6, as you said, is just absolutely crazy. So I actually would back Kerry to get at least 2 goals in this game, and I am going to back Kerry to win it. I just think they've proved during this league campaign that last year was no fluke, getting victories in the league over the likes of Meath, over the likes of Dublin, and they beat Dublin well. Like, they've proved that last year was no fluke, that they were in the All-Ireland final and that they were not a flash in the pan, and they're going to be back at the business end this year again.
And when you look at Galway conceding points, actually, when you look at their 7 games, the only game where they conceded more than 10 points was the game, coincidentally, against Kerry, where they conceded 3 goals and 11 points. Like, in one particular game, actually, they conceded 4 goals and 4 points against Cork. Point exactly. Like, they conceded a lot of goals, but they don't concede as much points then. But you have to back Kerry. When you look at the scoring sensations, like Erica McGlynn scored 3 points, chipping in as well. Like, Louise Galvin's back into the team after being absent for much of last year as well. So to have that experience with youth in this Kerry team, like, I'd probably back Kerry to win this game as well, probably about 2 points or so. But before we leave the game, do you back any of these 2 sides to win the All-Ireland, especially Kerry, because they seem to be motoring on very nicely?
I'd put both of them right there in the mix. I think this championship is more open than it's been over the last 10 years. You've got the Cork dynasty, and then you had the Dublin dynasty, and now you've had Meath back to back. But now Eamon Murray leaves, and all of us don't look as strong as they did over the last couple of years. And you've got Dublin in transition, you've got Cork in transition, you've got Kerry really on the rise, Galway on the rise, you've got there as dark horses. Like, there's so many teams that I genuinely, Mayo as well, sorry. There's so many teams there that I genuinely believe actually are in the bracket of a team that could win the All-Ireland this year. And I definitely put both of these teams in that bracket.
I would as well. When you look at the 2 teams so far in the league, like Dublin seem to be more, like, it's a weird one with Dublin actually. Like, they have good results some days, but they far to deceive other days. Cork seem to be getting a new breed of players coming in. Meath have struggled badly in the league. I don't know what it is about Meath. Maybe it is Eamon Murray leaving. Vicky Walls come in late as well, so we'll have to see how that progresses. But you definitely say it's a competitive championship. I definitely agree, because when you look at all the championships, when you look at the ladies football championship, I think Kerry, Galway are up there. Mayo, if they get their act together, possibly could scalp a few results. Cork have good attackers. Dublin have a good team. Meath, obviously, still floating. So it's going to be a very interesting championship after this league final, of course.
Big time. And I think out of all the 4 codes, I think it's the most open out of any of the championships. I think if you were to say, look, the Camogie, it's probably going to come from the big 3 again: Galway, Kilkenny and Cork. In the hurling, it's can anybody beat Limerick? In the football, it's more kind of the top 4 teams, top 5 teams that's going to come from them. Whereas this championship is so open. I really do believe that I would would not be surprised if any of Kerry, Galway, Mayo, Meath, Dublin, Cork, if any of them won it, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Even Armagh, like if they get their act together, when you've Amy
Armagh
Matten
definitely
and the
is
team,
dark horses. Definitely is dark horses.
exactly.
The only thing is that they do have that glass ceiling over the last few years, and they just haven't been able to get over the line in that one game, which could really take them to the next level so far. But I would love if they did, because I really like the way that they play football. They play really exciting, attacking, football on the front foot. And Amy Mackin, as I said, is probably my favourite player in the game right now.
Yeah, it's going to be a very, very interesting All-Ireland, and definitely a good day of league finals in Throw Park. And the final game we'll go over. You talked a bit about the Camogie there. It is the Camogie League final between my own county Cork against Galway, live on RT2 Sunday, 1:50 p.m. Bit of a weird time there, but there you go.
Mm-hmm.
But in fairness, like both of these sides, along with Kilkenny, have been, the standard bearers in Camogie over the last few seasons. Like Cork, when you look, Amy O'Connor is the one that jumps off the page. 2 goals, 27 points. Don't really need to elaborate. Like, she's an absolute brilliant player in Camogie when it comes to scoring stats. Saoirse McCartan's done well. Fiona Keating with 10 points. So when you look at Cork over the last few seasons, it's a weird one because their players have performed well in recent games, but they don't seem to get national trophies on the board. And it's kind of a weird one because when you look at the Cork team, they perform well, but ultimately they've lost to Galway. And they lost to Galway twice in an All-Ireland final and a league final, and they lost to Kilkenny in the All-Ireland final last year. So is this game important for Cork to try and get a trophy on the board?
Yes, 100,000,000%. This game is hugely important because they'll look at those two finals. I think particularly the one 2 years ago, because I remember the second Katrina Mackey hit that shot and it hit the back of the net. I was thinking, there's no way Cork don't win this game now. And somehow Galway pulled them back. And the same absolute heartbreak last year again. It's one of those things where they'll be sitting there thinking, how have we not won one of those games? They'll be desperate to put that right this year. And I think winning this league is a massive step in the right direction. But I think, like Amy O'Connor, as you said, Fiona Keating, both of them in outstanding form. You got the likes of Hannah Looney there, somehow juggling both the football and the camogie. But I do think Cork are desperate to put right the wrongs of the previous 2 years. And I think winning this league final would be a great way to start that off.
And when you look at the games from Cork, the 5 games, obviously the 5th game we'll leave out. That was against Galway, where Cork were playing with half a team. They lost by a point in Páirc Uí Chaoimh that day. But when you look at their previous 4 games, including the game against Kilkenny in Nolan Park, they scored 23 points against the All-Ireland champions in spring, which tells you all you need to know. Like, Cork are definitely firing this year. Tipperary was a close game. But when you look at the Clare Dublin games, again, 2 hammering. So is this as good a chance as any year for Cork to win the All-Ireland? When you look at their players performing, when you look at Matthew Toomey, look, I've spoken to him in the past with Southern Star as well. He seems to be a driven manager as well to try and win this All-Ireland. And when you look at their younger players coming through, Orla Cahallan's another prime example, juggling ladies football and camogie, excellent player, coming from an excellent family, of course. So when you look at Cork's players performing well, when you look at their league results, Amy O'Connor is on form, Matthew Toomey seems to be getting a tune out of them. Like, you have to expect Cork to win the All-Ireland, if not this year, surely next year at least.
Yeah, I'm actually going for Cork this year to win it. I think that they just have a really nice blend of experience and then obviously new stars coming as well. As you mentioned there, the likes of Orla Cahallan, just coming into a side where there already is the likes of Amy O'Connor, Fiona Keating, Hannah Looney. Like, they've such talent, and I probably just think that it is their time. It was Galway's 2 years ago. It was Kilkenny's last year. So time to finish off the big 3. And Cork should take it this year, I think. And winning this league is going to be a massive step in the right direction. Look, the defence is going to have to hold up. Galway have really talented forwards. I mean, the likes of Eilish O'Reilly, always someone that manages to pop up with huge scores at huge moments. You've got obviously the likes of Orla McGrath as well there as well. So I think as well as their forwards firing, they're going to need to watch the Galway forwards in this game too. But I do feel like winning this league final will be a big step in the right direction towards putting right the wrongs of the 2 All-Ireland finals in the 2 previous years.
It's actually interesting you mentioned that we'll touch on Galway a small bit, because I think we're both going to back Cork to win this Camogie final. But
Correct.
when you look at Galway's scoring charts, it's only really been Carrie Dolan with 241 and Ailish O'Reilly with 210. The next top scorer then is Shannon Corcoran with 1-1. Like, it tells you, like, they're reliant on them two forwards. The McGraths haven't come back in yet, as far as I know. They won the All-Ireland with Sarsfields, and they haven't come back since. So it'll be interesting to see if they come back this weekend. But
They need
Galway,
them back big time.
they do. They do. Not just
Because
Orla, but Niamh could do a job midfield as well. Like, they definitely
the level that they've been relying on Carrie Dolan's frees have been quite startling, to be honest. Ailish O'Reilly's been producing the goods as well, but yeah, I mean, that 1-1 for the next top scorer after them two is quite frightening, the drop off from the top two to the rest.
It is, and it's kind of a big year for Galway when you think about it. Like, they lost the All-Ireland semi-final last year to Kilkenny, kind of a disappointing defeat after winning the league as well. They still have good players like Sarah Dorvan, still at full-back, still performing well as far as I know. The McGraths are surely going to come back come championship time. You, of course, have O'Reilly and Dolan. There's still some very good players in Galway, and of course, Cathal Murray's a decent coach as well. So you still have to expect Galway to be up there contending for the All-Ireland this season.
Yeah, no, I definitely would expect them to be right up there. As I said, they're part of the big three, but it's one of those things that when you look at it, the spread of scores that Cork have had has been really strong. The spread of scores that Kilkenny have had has been really strong. The spread of scores that Galway have had has not been really strong. And yes, I know that like Galway are in this league final and Kilkenny aren't. But if you look at it, if Carrie Dolan gets injured or if Ailish O'Reilly gets injured, who steps up to take that responsibility on? Who takes the frees if Carrie Dolan's missing? Like, that level of reliance that they have on one player is very dangerous. And if that one player can get injured, then, you know, it's a house of cards in a way. It's as delicate as that. And that's, I feel like Cork and Kilkenny are a little bit more of a team. There's more of an element of, yes, while the likes of Miriam Walsh and Denise Goff for Kilkenny are the obvious ones, there's other superstars in that Kilkenny team. And for Galway, Carrie Dolan and Ailish O'Reilly being as, you know, crucial as they have been, they really need to get the McGraths back in and take some of that burden off them.
They definitely do. Will be mystery that will they come back this weekend, but we are both backing a Cork win this weekend, probably, I don't know, 3-4 points or something like that anyway. So
yes,
yeah, should be a very, very interesting game this weekend. And interesting weekend of 5 games. Bit of a quiet weekend. Obviously, next weekend, I think there's about 12 games. So we're definitely looking forward to that. Indeed. So thanks, Seamus, for hopping onto the podcast today. If you haven't already, subscribe to Play On J on YouTube, follow Play On J on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok as well, TikTok as well. Some excellent content there. So thanks, Seamus, for coming onto the podcast today, and enjoy the games of the weekend.
No problem, Matthew. Thank you.